Me parece que en la parte del foro de preguntas y respuestas había
And we're
que
going
responder.
to the forum
Por
portion
favor, porque no
of
tenemos
questions and
tiempo para
answers.
hacer el foro
It
de
seems like we don't have
preguntas.
time,
Por tanto, quiero llamar a Paul
so I want to call on
para
Paul so that he
compartir
can
unos
share
minutos
the next
y
events,
luego pasar a Pascual,
and
que
then go
modera
to
el segundo.
Pascual, who is moderating the second portion.
Paul,
Paul.
We can move on now. Pascual, you can.
Hola, hola, ¿me escuchan? Can you hear me?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Bueno,
can hear you.
buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches para todas y todos.
Good day, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I am Pascual Duarte, a member of the International Coordinating Team and member of the League of Peoples of Argentina. I am going to moderate this portion of the conversation. This very important conversation. All right. There are different initiatives underway and best practices. In these difficult times, we have heard the sharing from our colleagues from different countries in this region. And now we're going to hear, that is, in the speeches we heard the different problems and challenges. But many countries in the region of about ongoing initiatives and best practices from our colleagues from Chile, Paraguay, and Bolivia. We're going to begin with a male colleague. A woman was supposed to speak, but I hear that she's had a difficulty joining us. So we're going to hear from Miguel from the National Organization of Fisherfolk of Chile. Miguel, you have 10 minutes, 8 minutes. Are you there, Miguel? Was not there? All right. Maybe he wasn't able to connect. Okay, then we'll move on to another panel. Group Genyoy, Centro de Estudios Genyoy from Paraguay. She is going to speak about the role of rural women in struggles for land. Sarah, are you there? Hi, can you hear me? Yes, go ahead. You can go ahead with your presentation. You've got 8 minutes. Great. I don't know if you can share my presentation here, or I'll just. And for the, we have got folks from Bolivia, Chile, Venezuela, Brazil, Brazil again, the National Network for Resistance in Guatemala, the Coalition for Food Sovereignty of the Peoples, The objectives that we have for this that are going to feed into the event with all of the other regional inputs. And this is a global event that's going on until the 23rd of September. We are going to, the idea is to learn from current food systems in the region, to look at the neoliberal models, look at the capitalist models and how they have affected us, what the impacts and the consequences have been for people and the environment and economies, and to promote a more fair, equitable, healthy, and sustainable food system as an alternative to these capitalist systems that have been imposed and that just try to pursue profit. We want to talk about environmental and indigenous food systems, the sectors that have been historically excluded, and we will try to share alternatives and best practices to address the problems caused by neoliberal food systems. And as I said, these results will be included in the final declaration and the final plan of action that will be coming out of these Counter Summit events from September 21st to 23rd. We have a website. You should please visit it. It must be in the Zoom somewhere. But anyway, I'll put it here. Well, so now I will give the mic to Razan. And do the next part of this webinar. I hope that everybody stays with us through the final session, and please send your questions and commentaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Am I heard? Yes, okay. Thank you. So, we are really honored, me, Razan Zoaiter, the co-chair of PCFS, and on behalf of my colleague Sylvia, the co-chair as well of PCFS, to thank you all of this very, very important webinar. And as a Palestinian myself, I am really honored being president of the Arab Network for Food Sovereignty and the Arab Group for the Protection of Nature, to be partnering with LAC, with Latin Americans, that these people that we share with our struggles and causes, and we are really honored to be with you. I would like to brief in a few minutes about the GPS. Isis spoke about it very clearly, and to end with a matter that is of concern to us in the region and to the world as well. As the COVID-19 continues to surge, the number of people facing hunger is terribly increasing. In 2020 only, the number increased by 2.37 billion people that have no access to food, and they are on the verge of hunger. 11% of this number is in LAC in Latin America, about 267 million. We are observing that acute food insecurity requiring emergency responses has increased in El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua due to the double impact of hurricanes Eta and Lota and the economic effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. While the situation of food insecurity in Cuba has been exacerbated by the economic and financial embargo imposed by the US, which has impeded the export of goods and services, procurement of resources, and trade since 1958. Sanctions are happening in your region and in many other countries, as you know, mainly in our region, in the Arab countries, in like Iraq, Yemen, Syria, and Iran. Most of you are aware that the United Nations Food System Summit will be happening on the 21st to 23rd and in New York, and has been under fire by civil society all around the world for their insisting to serve corporate interests. The FSS has tried to kidnap even our name. They are calling themselves now People's Summit. We are trying in our summit, in our alternative summit, which we are planning and we have been planning since the beginning of the year, to tell them that this is our summit that represents us. Counter summit to the UN Food System Summit.
अहिले हामीले गरिरहेको समिट चाहिँ खाद्य सम्प्रभुता र संयुक्त राष्ट्रसङ्घको खाद्य प्रणाली.
Sorry, do you hear me? Hello?
Yes, please.
Yes, because I heard somebody speaking to me. Okay. The People's Coalition on Food Sovereignty is leading the GPS, which is the Global People's Summit, in partnership with 20 other organizations, which means it's a big movement now. The Global People's Summit is a space to listen to rural people's aspirations. We believe in three important factors. First, peasants must have the right to land and resources. Second, there must be a community-led agroecology or sustainability in food production, consumption, and distribution. And thirdly is the issue of food sovereignty. The culmination of the Global People's Summit should bring out a People's Action Plan and a People's Declaration with the theme Resist and the Global Corporate Food Empire. I would like in the last 2 minutes to speak about a very important subject which is undermined in the World Summit that's going to take place. They have something called Track 5, which speaks about stresses and conflicts, but actually it has nothing to do with the people living in crisis or wars or occupations or under sanctions. So we are trying to organize webinars and meetings with people living in conflicts, and we came out with a few headlines I would like to share with you. That people, first one is that people in conflicts should be in the center of any discussion. We should not be receiving resolutions from the north to discuss the problem of conflicts. Second, people in conflicts should be there in partnership discussing the root causes of any conflicts, of all wars. We should be there to discuss the obligations of the countries impacting us and militarizing and causing all these wars. We are looking for a peace that is a just peace and not any peace. And I can give an example in Palestine. They claim we have peace now, but it's not a just peace. So the intifada and the struggle goes on increasingly every day. Then we will like to see that the act of sustaining wars, keeping countries on wars, should be also ended, because it's becoming a business not to win a war for the imperialists, but to keep peoples and nations in constant fighting and wars. Last, we would like to see that the use of food and water as weapons prohibited. Having said all this, we assure you that we in PCFS, APN, ANFS, and all other organizers of this meeting and organizers of the Global People's Summit, we assure you that we will never surrender. We will always resist to exist, and all together we will never be defeated. Thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you so much.
हामीले हाम्रो अभियानलाई सुरुवात गर्नेछौँ भनेर चाहिँ
Thank you,
उहाँले
Hassan, for your presentation. It was very clear. Now,
हाम्रो मिटिङ चाहिँ
we are
वास्तविक
going to go to
अर्थको
Paul,
खाद्य
who will
सम्प्रभुता
present a
र
short
संयुक्त
video,
राष्ट्रसङ्घको खाद्य प्रणालीको
and we'll come back.
रिलेटेड
Thank
मिटिङ हो
you.
हामीले हाम्रो मान्यताहरूलाई छोड्ने छैनौँ हामीले हाम्रा विचार हाम्रा भावनाहरू हाम्रा एजेन्डाहरूलाई नछोडिकन अगाडि बढ्नेछौँ र हामीले हाम्रो अधिकार प्राप्तिको लडाइँलाई जारी राख्नेछौँ भनेर चाहिँ उहाँले भन्नुभएको छ यो साउथ अमेरिकन देशहरूको शिखर सम्मेलन हो
into Spanish, into Portuguese, into English. Just look at the little globe that's on the bottom of your screen that says interpretation, right next to the Q&A function. And then you can hear the interpretation. All right, so we're going to the next part, and I will give the mic to my colleague, Cristina Hernandez from the National Federation of Artisanal Fishers of Chile. She is going to lead the next session, which is the presentations from the countries. Cristina? Can you hear me? Yep, we can hear you and see you. All right. My name is Cristina Hernandez. I'm representing the Association of Artisanal Fisherfolk of Chile, talking about the problems and challenges of countries now in this section of the webinar. We've got participants from Venezuela, Brazil, Guatemala, and Colombia. We're going to start with the presentation from Venezuela about the search for farmland and the anti-imperial struggle of the peasants. Danny Gonzalez will be presenting. He's Vice President of the National Federation of Peasants in Bolivarian Venezuela. He will present now. Danny, go ahead. Is Danny with us?
He's not yet with us. No. Please call the next participant.
Okay, so we'll go to the next presentation, please. Okay. We can move on to the presentation from Brazil about the temporary framework and its impacts on indigenous peoples. We're going to hear from Timoteo Popigua from the Comissão Guarani Yurupa. Go ahead, Timoteo. Timoteo, the floor is yours. Timoteo, you can speak.
I think that Timoteo has a certain difficulty to hear. I have also, não sei se, I don't know if he solved the problem because he cannot hear. He has a problem, a technical problem with hearing the conference. Oui, allô? Oui, c'est moi. Maman, merci. Merci.
So you're going to talk about the resistance of Brazilian peoples?
Oui, c'est moi. Oui.
That's right.
I was asked to support uh, uh, have I've worked before with agricultural with the people of without land, and I received the invitation. It would be very important to bring an aspect to discuss with the people. People have problems to hear what I am saying. I don't know if everybody is understanding because Timoteo is not here and I'm going to speak. Uh, can you hear me?
Yes.
May I continue? May I continue?
Yes,
Okay, thank
please.
you. I would like to thank the opportunity to discuss with you and on this very important panel. When I was invited, I, there were a couple of questions that would be very important to be shared with the organizations that are here in the Brazilian context, that you are following this president that is now as the leader of the nation, the president. On the question of the indigenous people, and he is there is a context of much insecurity for the people, the indigenous people of Brazil, also for the small rural workers. I think it is interesting to analyze the question of the project, the bill, the bill project of law. This is a treaty, international treaty with Costa Rica, with Chile, with Denmark, in Fiji, Honduras, Guatemala, Norway, and it is very important for the indigenous people, for the rural workers to establish an intent of dialogue between with the indigenous people and the governments. We have to foresee consultation. It is the right of the so that they could be heard, the community be heard. The measures be taken internationally. Since 2002 and 2004, the Brazilian government doesn't want to apply these treaties, and the indigenous people are not heard on the situation that are affecting them, and these are the lands that they occupy traditionally, but they don't have the right, they don't have a guaranteed right to be heard. So if they are not heard, it is the question of Brazil. Our function as counselors on the juridical question, it is a legislation that exists, and we want it to be guaranteed, and to have a struggle so that this legislation be applied, so that the people be heard. If Brazil really happens, this is the importance, the great importance of this question in Brazil. This issue is being dealt with legislative treaty, and we have to discuss the question, the bill, the project of law that went through the representatives. This is the question of the grillaging. The grillaging is that it's an old practice of taking the property of other people. This was this was an old practice, and people falsified the documents, and they got the property. They and this is more and more. This is done with computers, with digital numerical messages. So it will be very clear for everyone here who are participating that we settle temporary measures so that we can develop this project of law. This bill was approved by the representatives of the government, and then it's going to the Senate, the federal Senate, and if it's signed by the Senate and by Bolsonaro. We are in this phase. This project is approved. What it is going to do is legalize the appropriation, the illegal appropriations of the proprieties of the land. So the person that didn't have a propriety when there was an invasion in a public land, and if these people who went to public land and established there and hello. I, I think Andres is speaking, but he's not being listened by ISIS. Andres, yes. Thank you for your presentation.
Yes, I would like to
Can
see
you do your presentation?
if Timoteo is ready for his presentation,
Do we continue
or should we
with
continue
Guatemala?
with Guatemala?
Good morning. Are you listening correctly? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sí, se escucha.
It's our struggle. The translator has problems with the sound. I cannot hear the sound. What he's saying. The communication is hacked. Is
Yes, Christina or Timoteo. We cannot hear. Yes, maybe Timoteo could turn the camera off.
We are asking Timoteo to turn off the camera because we cannot hear. The connection is choppy. Now it's better. Thank you. I said our struggle is for our life, for the life of nature, our knowledge has as origin our culture, our way of living. Tem uma situação, there's a antagonic situation, an opposed situation. We are trying. And the capitalists do not think about nature, about the life of life. Article 231 in the Brazilian Constitution is very clear. About the rights of and the situation is totally unconstitutional. And it's a great return to the past. And we have to maintain our way organizing of social organization that has been going on for thousands of years. Our social organization brings this vision to reinforce plantation. We want to continue. Today, the Brazilian government is discussing that the indigenous the Brazilian constitution, there is the right to land. Right to land is established in the constitution. Article says that whatever change that the government brings in a state discussion, the government has to listen to the people. And there's also the idea we fought for to survive. Now we fight for our lives. It's a vision. It's antagonic within the law, there is this the destruction of the forests, there the devastation of the with the mining industry. The indigenous people, since 1500, we went to from the genocide, have resisted the genocide since the 16th century. Our organization, it is very clear. Our organization is very clear. It's to fight for the rights, the 1,000-year-old rights of territorial occupation. We occupied this territory. Suddenly, there was a law that said that the indigenous had to live in such and such. We resisted for thousands of years, hundreds of years. Timoteo, yes? Presentation is ready. I have 8 minutes. Thank you, Timoteo.
Okay. Thank you, Timoteo. We're going to continue with Guatemala. We're going to listen to David Paredes. I don't know if he's ready. David. David, hello. You have 8 minutes to present. Yes, good morning, everybody. Good morning, colleagues from Guatemala, my organization in defense of food sovereignty here in Guatemala. I'm going to talk about two of the crops that have been quite damaging for us in the past few years. As you know, some of our rights have been attacked in the past few years, and you can see here a few of the problems that we've been having lately. Some of our rights, as I say, have been violated, and here in Guatemala, we mainly have sugarcane plantations. It's one of the top sugarcane producers in Latin America and in the world. Oil palms are also quite important in our country, and I've tried to summarize the damage that sugarcane plantations and oil palms are causing. They're quite similar in both cases. So let's see a few of the problems. They totally destroy the ecosystems where they are installed. That's the first problem. It's already been proved that it produces genetic contamination, which alters the whole ecosystem where they are produced. In our country, we've already had several ecosystems that have been completely damaged. The second problem is deforestation. The sugarcanes and oil palms are now taking over forests that had been there for thousands of years with a very high biological value, and they are damaging the biological diversity in those areas. We have, in fact, several endemic species which are being threatened by this problem, by these plantations. We have lost approximately 500,000 hectares of land due to these plantations, and this is obviously a great risk for biological diversity. In order to water these plantations, companies are often diverting rivers towards different directions that were not their original directions. And this is obviously a problem for the communities, a problem for community wells. Water can be found deeper and deeper. It's becoming more and more complicated to find water in these artisanal wells. Lives for their own water consumption and also for their plantations. The next problem on this list is the land grabbing that is happening. Some companies are grabbing land even from protected areas. This has happened because they are grabbing so much land. Sugar canes and oil palms are taking over such great amount of land. Because they're offered a certain amount of money for their homes, and those people who do not want to sell are left isolated. This means that in the end they are forced to sell their land because their lives are made impossible. They cannot even get to the rivers they need to get to. They cannot access the land around them because large companies have bought these lands. There are many conflicts in our country, many legal conflicts regarding land property. It's a complex issue in Guatemala. These companies also have a lot of power, and they have power even within the legislative powers, and they often end up winning legal battles in order to force some families to leave their homes. And obviously in this regard, these people are left without a home, even if they are given a certain amount of money for their homes. The last problem is the use of agrochemical products, which are used by the sugarcane industry and the oil palm industry. I mean, really, these companies are also are really behaving like drug dealers rather than legal companies. They've even become violent in some cases. So there's plenty of criminalization in this regard. We've also seen how the plantations of many families are being affected because companies just take over the water that they need. Also, as I was saying, some agrochemical products are causing an increase in CO2, the problem with global warming. So there's a big environmental problem there too for those families who wish to remain in their lands. There's a problem also with the ash that is generated with the burning of some fields and land. Some residue is being left in the rivers in these lands, which is also obviously a big problem for the families who wish to remain in these lands. And their right to food is not being respected. The right to water, to food, to freedom of speech, etc. Yes, 1 minute. 1 minute to finish, David. Thank you. So there are very big social problems related to these plantations, which can even end in alcoholism, which can foster violence towards women. So it's not only an environmental problem, but also becoming generally a social problem. We can see here images talking about the eco suicide in La Pasión. There's plenty of contamination in this land in order to apply policies to grab the land that they want to grab and use it in the way that they wish to use it, with agrochemicals and constituting a clear violation of human rights to food, to water, to health, etc. And this is obviously a common practice of neoliberalism. They continue to wish to sell food as a product and not as a right, which is what it should be. Thank you very much from Guatemala. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for your presentation. We're going to continue now with the presentations, and we're going to go to Colombia to talk about the ongoing fight against GMOs and the campaign for biodiversity conservation. We're going to hear from Claudia Jimena Roa of Global Forest Coalition. Hey, I'm speaking from Santander, Colombia, an area near the border with Venezuela. We are quite close to Venezuela, so that's to locate us. First of all, I want to thank everyone who's participating in this forum, and especially those who are organizing it and putting forth these struggles that we need to unite around in defense of the Mother Earth. I have a presentation that I would like to share, in which we have titled Community Conservation of Biodiversity and Food Sovereignty. It's about the different ways that a system is being imposed that attacks nature and all living things on this planet. As Razan said when she spoke, she mentioned the topic of peace and peoples in conflict areas. And on Saturday, the 16th of this month, a report came out that said that Colombia is below Palestine on the issue of peace. So we as a country have not been able to overcome war and conflict. And we also have not been able to overcome conflict with nature. The 21st newspapers nationally around Colombia showed how 227 defenders of nature had been murdered, 65 of them in Colombia. In countries like Guatemala, Brazil, Mexico, and the Philippines, these nature defenders who died struggling, fighting for their land, they were working against extractive industries, agro-industry, to protect the land, also from infrastructure. So we have focused on community conservation, as Timoteo said, to survive in our territories and to maintain ourselves there with different types of sovereignty. It has to do with food sovereignty, with forests and soil and all living things that inhabit these areas. We also care about feeding reptiles and fish and other creatures. We want to take care of the water for that reason. And we're making proposals about nature protection that are very difficult and complex in a country such as Colombia, but that are very important to Afro-descendant and indigenous communities. And we have seen, next slide, please. Next, please. So in this case, there are community and peasant reserves that, through different processes, we have been able to intervene and hold monthly meetings. Next, please. Next slide, please. Whoever's running the slides, can you do the next one? So the defense of seeds is connected to the defense of the land, territories, and cultures of peasants, indigenous peoples, and Afro-descendants and their modes of government. We had 2 peasant reserves, but now we have expanded and we've done exchanges with communities. Like in the Cauca region of Colombia, which has had lots of challenges too, and we have met to also sow diverse types of trees and food crops for the communities, peasant communities, and also for the different living creatures. Next slide, please. In this case, we did a campaign saying no to GMOs. The idea was to, in Colombia, while we import a lot of grains, agro-industry is favored in this way, and so there have been inventories of seeds carried out. We've met with different indigenous and peasant communities to show that that in this case, it is possible to have the seeds, the different varieties of yuca, plátano, cacao, tomato, achote, to be able to complement the diets of people and say no to the confinement or the control of seeds. They've been preventing peasants from transporting native and Creole seeds. And this restrains the seeds and doesn't allow people to bring them from one place to another. So this is a campaign that we carried out at a national level in Colombia with several organizations, and we've been able to overcome this challenge with seeds, to have a great variety. We did some analyses with a seeds group in Colombia, and we discovered that the seeds of peasant and are women. Next slide, please. With regard to seeds, we have got a loss of native and Creole seeds due to GMOs. Out of 1,700 farmers we used to have in Paraguay, now there are about 700. And groups that work on this issue are increasing. Another problem is access to markets. This is another problem for peasant agriculture. Instead of independent selling, we've got more intermediaries and more price competition. And this is something that affects women more because generally women have limited participation in decision-making and unequal access to work opportunities and lower salaries. Next, please. Next slide. I'm going to skip this so that I can talk about the most important stuff. Next. What do women do to resist? The birth of new feminisms and social movements led by women gives emphasis to feminism that fights against capitalism and patriarchy based on experiences and analysis by women. Next, please. I want to talk about Konamuri, which is an organization of indigenous and peasant women working class, small producers and associations, and currently they're working in 12 and to face discrimination based on race and gender. Konamuri is to gather seeds and rescue native and Creole seeds, which are considered the patrimony of humanity. And the initiative sought to store and exchange seeds of farming as a premise to start our ancestry, our inheritance, and to achieve a more fair future for everybody. Also, there's a link to a short documentary by Konamuri, which is called Semiyaroga, Recovering Seeds with Konamuri, and it's about what peasants have been doing with regard to seeds. Next, please. And I wanted to add also this case After the first wave of pandemic in the country, we had organized solidarity efforts to create community kitchens. According to NGOs, many thousands of people have faced hunger since the beginning of the pandemic, and women have led the fight for the right to food with a legislative effort that ended up resulting in a law on support and assistance for community kitchens around the country of Paraguay during the pandemic that was declared by the World Health Organization as due to COVID-19. Sada, your time is up, sorry. And they were able to pass a law. It's still in the process of being carried out. And that's it. All right. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your presentation. I understand that Miguel is present. Miguel Avalos. Yeah, can you hear me? Share your brief presentation and your speech. You have 8 minutes. Thank you, everybody. And good afternoon. Soila had an accident today, and
Recording in progress.
También desde los inicios la Confederación ha realizado una férrea defensa de carácter de los bienes comunes de los recursos marinos y de la obligación del Estado de administraciones sustentables, respetando además los derechos de las comunidades costeras. Propiciamos la pesca responsable, la eliminación progresiva de artes no selectivas como el arrastre, la regulación bajo criterio precautorio de las cuotas globales de captura. Apoyamos también en las áreas de manejo y la explotación de recursos bentónicos, como un sistema de coadministración que permite la explotación racional de los recursos bajo administración de los propios usuarios, como la pesca artesanal. También trabajamos para dar más protección y desarrollo para estas áreas protegidas. También propiciamos y apoyamos la acuicultura de pequeña escala, en especial énfasis a las nativas y que se desarrollan
protection and projects for coastal communities so that they can keep working in their own communities and not have to migrate to cities in search of employment. Since 2012, the Federation to give full access to caleta to local fisherfolk. We've got the Ley de Caleta about the rights of local artisanal fishers to use infrastructure and property is important to local fisherfolk in La Caleta. They need the time and space to carry out their historic work and to diversify their activities, especially in times when there is a high demand for different purposes and uses of the area. And many of our we work for access to basic services, access to housing, health, and other issues. And the pandemic has challenged us.
Yes, can we continue? Yes, yes. Particularly internet and telephone. Obviously, quarantine and confinement of our families also became a problem. And we wish to develop daily activities such as studying or generating these internet signals became a problem because many were working from home and also adults, and the internet collapsed. Another aspect in the defense of our communities is the protection of our environment. We believe in the right to live in an environment free of pollution and with a strong link to our to the existence of our sea resources. This means we are particularly vulnerable to any changes in the sea ecosystems. Throughout the past 3 years, we have tried to protect our fishing coves. We have tried to monitor the process of the localization of concessions. We have also tried to mitigate the sea impact, the impact on the sea of certain factories. We believe that we should use the available technologies in order to generate electricity so that we can also broaden the use of coastal areas, and we can review certain problems that are appearing in these areas. Since 2013, we've also constituted a cooperation together with many other associations in our region, such as, for example, the Peasants Workers Confederation or the National Consumers and Users Corporation in our country. Our aim when we created this alliance is to spread our message, to raise awareness regarding food sovereignty, and to improve food knowledge of Chileans. We would also like to open direct business channels between artisanal fish workers and local providers. We internationally participated in the Global Artisanal Fish Workers Forum and in several other forums. And what we're trying to do here is to make some progress in order to not only help fishermen, but also to create national and global policies that support food sovereignty here in Chile and everywhere else. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Miguel. Mauricio from the Polytechnic Institute, Thomas Ferrari, which is by the way, part of the latest chapter of the International League for the People's Struggle. So I would like to publicly say that we commonly support each other in our anti-imperialism. We are present in over 250 organizations. So, Maurito, you have 8 minutes. Thank you. Thank you, Pascual. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night.
Recording in progress.
Pueblos indígenas para luchar contra los sistemas alimentarios neoliberales impuestos. Y quizá nuestra respuesta sería categórica en el sentido de decir que lo que podemos ofrecer desde Bolivia es un modelo alternativo, endógeno, que de manera cultural, económica, política y social es distinto al capitalismo. Para hablar de ello, yo quiero en un minuto primero caracterizar a mi país para que puedan estar en contexto quienes nos están observando. Somos un país de 12 millones de personas aproximadamente, cerca de 4 millones participan en prácticas agrícolas. Tenemos a nivel de distribución geográfica, altiplano, valles, Chaco, Amazonía, es decir, somos muy diversos en pisos ecológicos, etcétera. Esta diversidad se refuerza con 36 naciones y pueblos indígenas. Tenemos quechuas, aymaras, guaraníes, mojeños, chiquitanos, ayoreos, mocetenes, yuracarés, entre otros indígenas. Según el último censo, el 62% de nuestra población se declara como perteneciente a un pueblo o nación indígena originario campesina. Somos un país históricamente rico en recursos naturales, pero que fue saqueado sistemáticamente por políticas liberales y neoliberales. Estamos hablando de que perdimos el oro, la plata, el zinc, el petróleo, el gas. Y en el caso de los sistemas alimentarios, el neoliberalismo hizo latifundio, élites, riqueza concentrada en pocas manos y, en contraste, minifundio para los pueblos indígenas campesinos y migración, ¿no? A partir del 2005, el pueblo ha dicho basta, se ha organizado y ha echado a andar un modelo del que les quiero hablar, que es alternativo al capitalismo. Sin embargo, un segundo antecedente, en el que igual me voy a tomar un minutito, es solamente decir qué han hecho el liberalismo y el neoliberalismo en los años. Lo que han hecho en más de 20 años es descuidar en realidad el sistema alimentario en Bolivia, porque ellos aplicaron la teoría de la modernización y entonces el crecimiento económico tenía que ir por el lado de la industrialización. Teníamos que pasar de una economía agraria a una economía eminentemente industrial y por tanto se descuidó la inversión en el sector agropecuario, se descuidó la asistencia técnica, la capacitación, los insumos, las semillas hacia el sector campesino e indígena. Al mismo tiempo liberalizaron el comercio, los mercados, y al ser un país que no estaba en condiciones de exportar, por supuesto hemos empezado a importar y hoy por hoy somos un país que depende, incluso a nivel de alimentos, de la importación, producto de ese intercambio desigual. Nosotros no producíamos nada para exportar, pero empezábamos a importar desde papa, frutas, manzanas, azúcar, y hoy por hoy estos elementos son proveídos por otros países, ¿no es cierto? No solamente hubo una dependencia económica, sino también por muchos años una dependencia cultural, es decir, se trató de hacer ver a lo indígena y a lo campesino como lo malo, lo que había que culturizar, y esto ha generado patrones de conducta de racismo, discriminación y violencia que lo seguimos viviendo hoy en día. Pero el desplazamiento de la economía agraria, ¿no?, por la economía primaria exportadora industrial ha ocasionado que seamos un país que depende de los ciclos alternos de bonanza o escasez de los precios de materias primas. Entonces reducen los precios, reducen nuestros presupuestos y no tenemos diversificación productiva. En concreto, incluso en épocas de bonanza, la clase terrateniente ha mantenido en este país el poder por más de 100 años. Estamos hablando de cerca de 39 millones de hectáreas que tenían bajo su poder. Ha crecido una burguesía agroindustrial a raíz de la soya transgénica, la caña de azúcar, deforestando y afectando a pueblos indígenas de Lomerío y Soso, que son de origen guaraní, ¿no? Y todo esto en el marco del 85% de un mercado transnacional que lo maneja.
35% of our markets are international markets. We could provide many examples of this. So how is it possible? How is it possible that we have many resources in few hands, and what has happened now? Well, resisted against the 20 years of liberalist policies. There was a popular movement that came to power, and through several different artisanal associations, we managed to create a different model, and those 39 million hectares that used to be in very few hands are now only 4 million hectares. So a lot of that land has been given back to the people who should own it. We have attained a better distribution. But obviously, there was a very big political problem last year here in Bolivia. In fact, there was a coup, and we now had to live an authoritarian situation against the indigenous people. There was a massacre on these people. They liberalized transgenic products. They began to destroy forests in the area. They were not paying the taxes that they should have been paying. Obviously, we began to import more food than we used to. There's no current law for peasants in this situation. And many of the seeds that are being used in Bolivia are now, many of the crops are now being affected by this new terrible situation. Between 40 and 60% of food in our country comes from agricultural resources produced by indigenous people in our country. So what we want to say is that our indigenous peasants movement did achieve victory because they managed to stop this military coup. They managed in the end to stop the policies that aimed to liberalize transgenic products. So it was a success. At the same time, COVID-19, the crisis caused by COVID, has caused high level of unemployment, which means that a lot of people have returned to their original communities.
अहिले हामी बोलिभियाको विषयमा सुनिरहेछौं कोभिड-19 को कारणले गर्दाखेरि
and this has helped our cause. Here in Bolivia, we believe in equality. Peasants' organization
Recording in
por decir algo,
progress.
que no sea
Mauricio.
agroecológica, que no sea orgánica. Termino, Pascual, con dos
Perdón,
ideas.
sí, tendrías que cerrar.
Yes, I think I need to finish. Yes, just finally, this is our own model. We're trying to satisfy our needs, to live well. We're trying to respect the rights that emerge from Mother Nature. We're trying to address any food problems, any hunger that may be suffered by our citizens. In our own country, and we believe this model has been successful. Thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions, but I would like to read out the questions for Sarah and Timoteo. Paul, what can we do? Help me. Yes, Paul. Okay. Yes. So what was the role of livestock in Brazil? If Timoteo or Andre can please answer. What was the role of livestock? Andre, Timoteo, I don't know if you're there. I can't see them connected. Sarah is here. Sarah is here. Sarah. Hello. Yes, sorry. There was a question for you. How has livestock changed communities' lives in Paraguay? Sorry, I said Brazil earlier on. Paraguay, and particularly women. Yes, as we and climate change have had a certain impact on women. It's been specifically important because as women we are slightly more vulnerable than men. Women in rural areas, women in rural areas are more vulnerable. The speaker has stopped speaking. Yes. Sorry. I was saying that women have always been more vulnerable than men. Access towards decision-making processes is more difficult for women in business, decision-making, really, and they don't really play a very important role. This is why a problem for women to become present in the economy. Yes, that's my answer? Okay, thank you for your answer, Sarah. We're now moving forwards towards some general considerations on who? Alejandro Barrios from the IPTK and from the People's Coalition for Food Sovereignty, Latin America and Caribbean. So we're going to talk about recommendations, campaigns, and actions.
Recording in progress.
La sectorialidad, etcétera, y podemos sacar una primera conclusión que el tema es muy preocupante en la región. Requiere un nivel de entendimiento entre diferentes países de toda nuestra vía Yala. Yo planteo al público en general sea participante
sustainable food system. The situation, we found out what's happening in different countries, and now we would like recommendations at a national level or even at a regional level. For example, we had a situation in Mexico not long ago with the LAC, with several different CSOs, several grassroots organizations. So we need to find our advocacy spaces. And as I say, the question is, what are the policy recommendations in order to reach a fair, equitable, healthy, and sustainable food system? And the second question is, are there already any campaigns or actions that can be coordinated at a regional or even at a global level? I think after Razan's intervention and a few others, it was clear that the tendency was rather worrying. We had a summit at the United Nations, which seems to be legitimizing these neoliberal policies. We all know that within the United Nations there are different organisms influenced by civil corporations regarding health and also food sovereignty. There are economic interests at the United Nations. So I think we cannot forget that we must maintain an eye on the global situation as well as our regional situation. So these are the two questions. See if anyone would like to participate, and if that way we can summarize. maybe you can write a few ideas on the chat, or if you wish to take the floor and speak out loud, that would also be wonderful. Anyone who would like to take the floor? Policy recommendations for a fair, equitable, healthy and sustainable food system. You can write your ideas on the chat if you wish to, or you can take the floor. Maybe Pascual has something to say, possibly the organizations like us that are promoting this space may wish to add something. Anybody? Claudia? Yes. Something that feels that is important is that the international treaties regarding the food system and also biodiversity, these trade agreements seem to be above everything else. So in Colombia, for example, they're even taking some of the crops that are being produced because you can't even sell sugar canes that are not part of a monoculture. So due to these big monopoliums, it's becoming very difficult for some small farmers to sell their products. And obviously the pandemic was also a problem and the economic crisis derived from it. Yes, thank you, Claudia. Pascual, I think you wanted to take the floor. Many things in common, and obviously some things not in common. Specific situation in some countries. And I believe that at least in Argentina, our communities have very similar problems to yours, but we have specific situations like the displacement of whole communities that we've seen, for example, lately, but mainly our struggle. This is a combo linked to the large monopoliums, and it's both a macro problem and a specific problem related to health. We need to fight against these large corporations because we're losing plenty of land. It's becoming very difficult for local peasants and farmers to sell their products. Our rivers are becoming contaminated. So it's a general health issue. And we need to realize that it's not only about food, but we need to link all these different struggles. Thank you, Pascual. There was a comment on the chat saying that a key recommendation would be to use public concessions in order to buy local and regional products from sustainable production, so supporting peasants in areas dedicated to agroecology, etc. Thank you very much for your comment. I think Miguel Avalos would like to take the floor. It's very nice to see you, Miguel. Hello. I hope you're fine. Alejandro, hello. It's been very important to take part in this meeting. So I wanted to answer the question. I think the COVID pandemic has made it very clear for everybody. So here we can see how many people would like to buy their food at local fishermen's in a more regional manner. And people tried to protect each other during the COVID pandemic. We tried to consolidate our market and we've tried to require as much assistance as possible. We've also been
talking about a new constitution, a new Magna Carta that's going to be marking the future destiny of our country. Not just the destiny of our country, but also we recognize that free trade agreements and different political entanglements can be generated, and it's citizens with their own criteria who can say what they want for our country or what they want for South America, because it's important to have this strategic alliance, these types of conversations. And to finish up, Alejandro, we've seen within the short time of this pandemic that at the end, we have a position. So I'm thankful for seeing you again, and hello to everybody who is at this seminar. Thank you, Miguel. I'm going to give the floor to Isis, but thank you for talking about the experience there. And in Bolivia, we know about constitutional processes and the importance of including indigenous people. Isis, go ahead. Sorry to everybody, but we have to wrap up this space. Isis, go ahead. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you to everybody for this space, for this conversation, for this mutual understanding. I wanted to highlight the role of subsidies, as Claudia mentioned. I think that's an important point for the region, especially, and we're seeing major corporations, even in unsustainable livestock, which is contributing to deforestation of ecosystems that are very important, like the Amazon, and governments themselves are subsidizing these activities.
Recording in progress.
Estrategias destructivas de modelos impuestos y de financiamiento extranjero que no reconoce las realidades internas. Y bueno, y un llamado también para reducir el consumo de carne que está detrás de esta deforestación masiva de nuestra región.
Perdón, hago además relación con un comentario que nos comparte David Paredes de RECHAC, que el destino de esos recursos, en vez de ser puestos en la subvención, deberían probablemente ir en la política pública en relación a la promoción de la agroecología. Voy a dar la palabra además a Mauricio, que también ha pedido, y luego vamos despidiéndonos. Mauricio, por favor, breve.
Gracias. Bueno, respondiendo a la pregunta, creo que habría que priorizar sin duda la producción orgánica. Uno de los efectos del neoliberalismo ha sido precisamente al alentar la oferta a la demanda.
Recording in
En el
progress.
tema de la transformación, nuestros países en América Latina dependen mucho del gas, ¿no? Del petróleo, de sus recursos primarios exportadores. Entonces, y eso hace que los gobiernos prioricen la inversión en esas áreas y no en el desarrollo agropecuario. Entonces, lo segundo es que para no depender hay que diversificar la matriz productiva y habría que transformar los alimentos, especializarse, semi-industrializar, y por tanto eso requiere inversión, ¿no? Entonces, eso es importante. Pero además esta transformación tiene que darse también en el marco de la armonía con la madre tierra, ¿no? Que en el caso de Bolivia, por ejemplo, ahora tenemos el litio, estamos empezando a industrializar litio, pero también con los debidos cuidados de mantener ciertos equilibrios con la madre tierra y no afectar. Y en el caso de la comercialización, habría que ver de garantizar, por supuesto, la generación de ingresos para los sectores que producen los alimentos, ¿no? Que son los pueblos campesinos, indígenas, las zonas simplemente sigan engordando las cadenas corporativas. Esto, lógicamente, con políticas de acceso a tierras, a territorio, agua, producción, etcétera, que creo que ahí hay que compartir mucho más y retroalimentar nuestras luchas. Yo en la segunda pregunta respondería que necesitamos políticas continentales, es decir, aunar más esfuerzos sobre nuestras luchas populares, darnos cuenta de que el modelo realmente está en crisis civilizatoria y hay que plantear otro nuevo. Deberíamos incluso plantearnos trueque, por ejemplo, ¿no? Trueque de alimentos en función al valor de uso y no al valor de cambio, que es netamente mercantil, por ejemplo. Pero bueno, transferirnos tecnología y también estas enseñanzas de modelos. Creo que eso redondea un poco, Ale, lo que quería aportar en esta parte. Muchas gracias por por invitarnos.
Mil gracias, Mauricio. Lamentablemente, además, nuestros intérpretes deben cerrar ya los canales, así que queremos cerrar de manera ordenada, agradeciendo a todas las organizaciones que han sido parte de este espacio y a los participantes. También se ha transmitido por el Facebook, así que seguramente otra gente nos está escuchando. Y creo que quedan muchas cosas por decir. Yo me voy a limitar en esta ocasión en dos cuestiones muy puntuales. Primero, destacar el enfoque de género que nos ha planteado Sara, pero además desde una mirada intersectorial de clase, de etnia y de género, porque no podemos percibir solo el tema de género aislado a una cuestión de clase, de responder a las necesidades y demandas del sector campesino, pero además reconociendo como un origen étnico también muchas realidades como la guatemalteca, ecuatoriana, boliviana y otras que se ha reducido un poco, pero igual son importantes en lo étnico. Lo segundo es, pues, desafiar el sistema como tal, planteando cosas desde lo local, pero además planteándonos también transformaciones estructurales. Las disputas son en todo nivel. Y ahora mismo la que nos convoca es incluso contrarrestar esta motivación que se tiene en Naciones Unidas de implementar la corporativización de la tierra, del medio ambiente, de la alimentación como tal. Creo que quedan cosas por decir. Seguramente la Coalición de los Pueblos por la Soberanía Alimentaria, el IPTK, la ILPS, el GCF, vamos a seguramente seguir convocándoles para seguir discutiendo en cómo podemos conectar entre diferentes promoción de un sistema alimentario que responda a la necesidad, que haya sido un espacio rico para poder profundizar en las reflexiones.